Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of r/IDontWorkHereLady, where you'll hear ridiculous stories about people mistaking regular Joe Schmoes for employees, and nobody knows how it happens, but it does. Guys, you know the deal. You're about to hear some super entertaining stories, so sit back, relax, and get ready to shake your heads. Oh, and do hit that subscribe button for future stories. If you're not subscribed, let's dive in. Welcome to Walmart. I'm the guy in black scrubs and a lanyard that says FBI crime scene, do not cross, attached to a badge with my work, clearly named. Never mind, I'm with my wife and kid. So twice I wander off to grab something we skipped or forgot, and twice randoms ask me where to find things, such as frozen veggies, where's the seafood section, etc. Both times I say, I'm not too sure, I don't work here and I try to avoid this place. Sorry, and on we go. Now, I'm reaching atop a high shelf to get a meal replacement drink. I'm reading the label and chatting with my wife about it, and my spidey sense fails me. My wife looks up behind me a couple times, and I don't register that I've applied for a new job. She tugs my sleeve and clears a path for Karen, saying, "Scooch over, babe, I think she needs in." And I move while turning and saying, "Sorry, lost in the label." Well, little did I know, my application has been accepted, and I'm hired and I start my new position 15 seconds ago. I receive a verbal warning for conduct immediately. Karen says, "When you're done messing around, I need you to show me where this item is. Your useless employees just point and send me the wrong way." Now, it took about 10 full seconds of blinking, thinking, and checking my outfit out to realize that all you need is a lanyard of any kind to get a job here. Coincidentally, it takes the same amount of time for a wild Karen to ignore all the signs present and become enraged at not having their demands met with groveling. She says, "Are you useless too? Let's go. I need this item today." So I give wifey a good solid kiss. She blinks and stares confused, and I say, "Be back in a sec." I look at my son and say, "Be good for mommy, buddy." Kiddo doesn't think much, but wifey catches on, and she sighs, saying, "Really?" I check my badge again just to see if the ignition kicks on for Karen, but it doesn't. And I say, "Well, I'm pretty new here, but I'm sure we'll find it. Right this way, ma'am." So she made it down 4 aisles that most definitely wouldn't have what she wanted before mentioning my incompetence. She says, "I can't see why they put you in charge." Now at this point, I can't help but to agree and say, "I'm right there with you, ma'am. It seems like a major oversight." So she follows me through pet food, through electronics, down the pharmacy aisle, up the shoes, and she finally draws the line at the garden center, saying, "I'm looking for this food item. Why would you take me here? There's no food back here at all." It's been fun, but I'm bored and she's either gonna get the point shortly or never. So I say, "Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe we should get someone who works here. Do you think I should go find someone?" And the look on her face is priceless. She looks me up and down, and the sudden realization that I don't work here kicks in. She sputters something like, "Sorry," and then she walked off towards the food, and I haven't received next week's schedule. I'm not hurt though, the pay was terrible. Guys, how in the world do you mix up someone wearing all black scrubs as a Walmart employee? I'd say she deserved having her time wasted if she blatantly called a customer useless for not helping her when they don't work there. How did it take her that long to not realize? Seriously. So this just happened 20 minutes ago, and I'm still laughing about it. I was in the Bullseye store with the red vest and shirts. I was picking up a few office supplies. To start, I'm dressed quite well. I've got dress pants and a dress shirt on, so I look pretty professional. I gathered the items I needed and headed to the checkout lanes. I then hear a banshee-like shrill screaming, "Hey! Hey, you!" I looked around, and this lady has a person who really does work there backed into a corner, and the poor girl looked to be on the verge of tears. I look over and she says, "Yes, you, Mr. Manager, come here and discipline your employee. She refuses to help me and she was very rude, and called me some very bad names." Now, I've read enough of these I don't work here posts and always wondered why nobody does this, so I gave it a shot and said, "Is this true? Were you rude to this wonderful piece of humanity?" The girl said, "No, I just told her that I'm on my way home. I just finished my shift, and if she needs help, she can ask somebody else who would be more than happy to help her, and clocked in." When I told her this, she reached for me and I backed off. I don't like strangers touching me, and I never insulted her. Karen then screams, "Liar! You called me all sorts of bad words. When I find my husband, he will have you fired if you don't do something about it." So me, not wanting this Karen to berate the girl any longer, said, "Lady, I'm the district manager. I will have to ask you to calm down, and if you don't, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the store." Karen says, "What? Well, I'm just very upset. It's been most distressful. In all my years, I've never been treated so horribly." I told her, "Ma'am, I understand, but if you aren't settling down, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the premises or be escorted out by security." I then pull out my phone to check a few text messages. Karen says, "But my husband!" I told her to go to the customer service desk, page your husband, and tell him that you'll be waiting outside for him while he does the shopping. Now, I'll have to ask you to leave the store immediately. At this point, I pretend to talk to security on the phone saying, "Yes, we have an unruly customer who needs to be escorted out from the store." Karen huffs and throws what she has on the floor and leaves, threatening to sue and shut the store down. I turn to the employee and ask if she's okay, and she tells me, yeah, that she didn't know a district manager was in the store, but she's glad I was and hopes that she won't get into too much trouble for not being able to deal with the Karen. I tell her, "Nah, you're not in trouble. I don't even work here." So after a second or two, it sinks in what I said and she begins to laugh uncontrollably. I told her that I managed the restaurant up the street and she's welcome to come in and have a free meal on my dime. As I leave for the restaurant, I walk through the parking lot and see the Karen sitting in a pickup truck on her cell phone. I could hear her muffled screams and crying, and I figured I'd better get the heck out of here. The girl did come to the restaurant to thank me. I told her the offer for the free meal is still good. She took me up on it, but tipped the server really well, even though it was a free meal. We talked and laughed about the Banshee, and she laughed even harder when I told her about seeing her sitting in a truck. I'd say OP did his good deed for the day, guys. You know what? Ever since reading these stories, I've been frequenting Walmart and Target more often, hoping for these encounters. My friends, do take notes when you're listening to these stories, because one day, you might need to come in and save an employee from a Karen. I love Target. I'm also a stress eater who happens to be waiting on the results of a biopsy. See where this is going? So I'm wandering down the candy aisle wearing a green floral dress and a yellow cardigan. You know, nothing at all even vaguely resembling a Target employee. I've grabbed a package of Marshmallow Moon Oreos and a box of Fruit Loops, and I'm seeking to round things out by grabbing some Twizzlers. I see an old Karen blocking the area with her cart as she yells into an ancient artifact of a flip phone about what Billy likes and how no, it can't be the hairy Bow Bears. She'd remember the gold package. I see the Twizzlers, but alas, they are physically out of my reach behind the barricade of good old Karen's cart. I approach her as gentle and as quiet as I can be, trying not to disturb her on the phone, mouthing, "Excuse me," while pointing at what I want. Karen looks right at me and proceeds to huff and not move. I then said, could you please move your cart? Karen waves me off as if I were a gnat. Okay, at this point, I'm annoyed. I just want to grab my rare junk pile treat and go home to watch Gilmore Girls and forget about the potential nightmare growing in my stomach. Now, I'm not exactly a large woman, so I think I can fit between the red plastic trademark cart and just grab my candy. But boy, was I wrong. Proto-Karen brays as she actually hip-checks me, sorta side-scooting her cart closer to the candy rack and knocking loose several items in the process. "Excuse me," she says into her phone. Some stupid employee with nothing better to do feels like harassing me. She wraps her cloven fist around the lower half of her phone and leans toward me dramatically and says, "Move along now. I'm a customer. Customer. Go sweep up the back or something." She then sees my expression. Now, I have resting bitch face at the best of times. Seriously, you should see me in those pictures they snap on roller coasters. So when it's time for the actual bitch to come out, your girl is ready. I tell her to move, and Karen snapshot her phone, trying to match my fury but succeeding only in looking like one of those shriveled old Apple dolls that people force their children to make. She says, "I will have your job for this. Just you wait." I told her, "I don't work here." I go to push her cart out of the way, but she yanks it first, knocking into a rack, causing a bunch of loose stuff to tumble to the ground. She then says, "I don't know why you have to stock things now. You could have waited until the paying customers were done here. Now look at the mess you have to deal with." She chuckles at this, as if I'm a child who's just gotten a taste of the cocoa powder they've been begging for. I asked her, "Are you crazy or just stupid?" I set down my cookies and cereal to pick up a handful of Ferrero Rocher and Godiva boxes. It's not like she was gonna clean up after herself. She says, "I will have you know, the manager of the store and I are good friends. He really will fire you." I asked her, "What part of I don't work here are you failing to understand?" Finally, the Karen elder seems to realize that I'm not wearing red, or a name tag, or anything else that would indicate that I work for Target, not that I turned down the employee discount. She then says, "If you're not an employee, then why are you cleaning up like one? Leave that to the monkeys who work here." I told her because I try to be a decent person. Karen does not know how to react to that. I'd like to think it's because the idea of being a decent human being is entirely a foreign concept to her. She stands there for a moment, watching me face a shelf that she herself had demolished, clutching her phone like an amulet. After a brief pause, she snaps to and snatches away her cart, vacating the candy aisle, but not before zinging me with this whopper. She says, "Fine, but you're stealing their jobs." Guys, at this point, I don't even know if these Karens are trolling people or what. There's no way that she could have mistaken OP for a Target employee. They wear black and red, and OP was wearing a dress and a cardigan. Can someone please help me try to figure out how this even happened? Is it fake, or are some people actually this clueless? So I'm still having trouble believing that this happened, despite the insurmountable evidence that says it did. This story also happened to my wife, which makes it much scarier for me that I wasn't there when this all went down except at the end. So my wife, who we'll call Jessica, was shopping at our local Walmart with our daughter, who is 2 months old at this point, getting some stuff for dinner for the week. Let me start by saying that in no way was she wearing any clothing that said she worked at Walmart. She was in the spice aisle on a relatively not so busy day, trying to figure out what spices we may be low of, when a Karen walks up to her. Karen looks somewhat familiar to my wife as she approached her, but any hopes of trying to figure out who she was immediately dashed by the moment she opened her mouth. Karen says, "Excuse me, I need help getting the pancake mix. It's on the top shelf." Now, Jessica, looking confused, said, "I'm sorry ma'am, but I don't work here, and I can't help you out either because I'm only a few inches taller than you, so I don't think even I could reach it." At this point, Karen raises her voice and says, "Don't give me that. I know you work here because I saw you helping an older gentleman a few moments ago." Now, at this point, Jessica looks even more confused and said, "I'm not sure what you're talking about. I haven't talked to anybody except my daughter since I got here." Karen raises her voice more and says, "Don't you dare lie to me. I saw you help that guy, and how dare you bring your kid to work? That's so unprofessional." Now, what kind of crowd did this confrontation draw, you may ask? Well, a grand total of one person, a lady, who was standing at the end of the aisle watching all this unfold. There were a few people that looked down the aisle, but they continued walking, and this is important. Now, my wife can be a calm person, and she doesn't really like confrontation, but boy does she snap quick. She's well aware of her quick temper and will usually walk away from a situation if her blood starts to boil. Obviously, this was one of those situations. Without saying a word, she turns around and grabs the cart and then attempts to leave. Karen at this point is practically screaming at her saying, "Hey, get back over here. I wasn't done talking to you. I want to speak to your manager and I will have your job." This was the last straw for my wife. She turns around and starts screaming and cussing at her. She wouldn't tell me exactly what she said, but she felt so bad for some of the words that she chose. Karen looks utterly shocked. Then, she suddenly placed her head in her hands and started to cry. My wife felt bad for her for a second and was about to apologize when suddenly, Karen just took off running past her. When she turned to try to stop her, she watched Karen suddenly run into somebody who was standing right next to my wife's cart, knocking them both to the floor. It was the same lady that was standing at the end of the aisle. Karen very quickly shifts gears back to the usual Karen attitude and says, "How dare you assault me? I will have you both arrested for this. Someone call the police on this lady." At this point, the lady in question looked very concerned, and she looked like she just wanted to get the heck out of there. She got up and turned to run away, but as soon as she turned around, the manager and a police officer had just appeared behind her. The officer said, "What's going on here?" Karen's voice has gone from a shrieking eagle to a very calm but serious tone and says, "You need to take the three of us to the back room right now." The manager says, "Oh, believe me, we are." When they got back there, apparently everything was revealed. Evidently, the lady that Karen had run into had been stalking my wife throughout the store, and Karen had noticed her strange behavior. She had called the police earlier, hence why the officer had been there so quick. After she hung up the phone, it looked like the lady was about to make her move, so Karen decided to try to deter her, as well as try to call a manager over at the same time by acting the way she did. She didn't want my wife walking away towards the lady, so she did what she could to try to keep her to stay. Unfortunately, she wasn't planning for her to completely take her attention off my daughter. During my wife's beratement towards Karen, the creepy lady was making her move, so Karen took action while trying to keep things calm by pretending to accidentally run into her. She also didn't flat out warn my wife because she wanted to try to catch the person straight up, because she knew if she had scared her away, that she might try again with another child. So upon reviewing the security footage, it was confirmed that the lady was indeed following my wife around. And, after lying to the police about her identity, they found out that she had a warrant for her arrest for relations in multiple child abduction cases across the state. It was believed that she was the head recruiter for a large human trafficking ring. I was called a few moments later and flew down the highway to meet with my wife and make sure everything's okay. Guys, what an absolutely absurd story. Did this woman actually try to abduct a 2-month-old in a freaking Walmart? It's a good thing Karen was there to save the day. I do have one question though. How the heck did Karen know to contact the police and that this was a potentially dangerous person? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, once again, thanks for coming to hang out with me today and listening to these wacky stories. If you enjoyed it, do leave a thumbs up, and if you missed yesterday's episode, I will link it right here. An entitled mother steals her own daughter's Make-A-Wish Day wish. It's absolutely crazy, so check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.